my house. It's all snow. It says my trial expires in 4 days. Safer, faster, and more peaceful internet. Who is doing this? Ad remove. Privacy alert. I don't know. Am I still there?
Yes.
I am.
Yeah.
Okay. The people who created Zoom, I can't remember their names, but they were certainly acquaintances. And they said, you ought to try this. And I said, okay. And I did. And then they keep coming back and say, you need us to pay. I mean, well, you need to pay us $400 million. And I'm saying, sorry, but it's always nice to see you guys. All right. So where are we?
Well, Heidi is our hostess, and you and I are guests, and I'm more of a navigator. You're really the guest in chief, Harrison. So let's see how Heidi wants to open it up, and she'll prompt us, and then we'll go from there. How's that?
Cool.
Sounds good to me.
So I'm going to share my screen for a moment while we get started. Tell you a little bit about Coaching Agile Journeys, and this is, of course, Coaching Agile Journeys is hosting this open leadership series. We're on the second of 4 right now, and of course, we're very grateful to have Harrison Owen here with Daniel Mezick talking about open space in organizations. We are just a group of volunteers, almost 3 years strong now. And so we've been doing these online meetups for 3 years. So you can definitely check us out at our website. Of course, please follow us on Twitter. We'd love to have more followers. You'll get notified of our events. We have a YouTube channel, and you can see all of our Twitter handles here. Here's our lovely faces. If you see us on video, you'll know who we are. Isaac Garcia, myself, Heidi Araya, Jeff Poors, Kristen Hernandez, Mark Krupp, and Lori Townsend. So thank you. Raise your hand if you're a co-host, and you'll recognize us. We're also really excited about our new podcast. So a podcast has got, I think, 5 with 2 more sessions coming up soon. It's on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon Alexa, YouTube. You can find it on the web at opentobeagile.podbee.com. By the way, Open to Be Agile was inspired by open movement also. So we live off of the donations that we get. So please fund us and buy us some coffee. If we have made a difference in your life, please consider supporting our work. And so this is in preparation for the Open Leadership Symposium, and we'll come back to that at the end of this discussion. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now, and I'm going to turn it over to Daniel Mezick and Harrison Owen. So excited that you both are here.
Okay, so I'm just going to give a very, very brief, intro here and kind of set the stage, and then, Harrison will substantially provide the content with his reflections and the answering the questions and stuff any way that he wants to do it. I know from experience that that's what's going to happen anyway. So let's just get underway. First of all, if you've been involved in open space in a conference, an Agile conference, you know that the theme usually isn't a very hot kind of a theme. It could be kind of a lukewarm or kind of just a conference theme. The people have low cohesion, so if someone irritates you with something, you're leaving anyway tomorrow, so why does it matter? You know what I mean? It's not like in an organization. Also, usually there's not a highly authorized sponsor, like a big boss who's inviting everybody to this conference, open space. It's more of a community event, right? And lastly, there's usually lukewarm interest in the generation of proceedings because there's kind of a lukewarm theme, so why does anyone care about the proceedings? That's kind of what happens, right? So in an organization, this is very different, right? In an organization, there's a big boss who invites you to an open space event, and they authorize the time and the space for that event to happen, and the invitation itself. And usually there's a compelling theme that people really care about, that there's a lot of heat about, like organizational change, digital transformation, and agile transformation. And people are free to opt in or opt out of that according to the rules of open space. And lastly, the sponsor usually stands in front of the group and after welcoming everyone, reminds them that the proceedings are really what we're here to get and that we intend to act on what's in those proceedings with you all. right? So those are three big differences in the open space in conferences and open space in organizations, right? So we're here to talk about open space in organizations. And I can't think of anyone with more expertise in this area than Harrison Owen. I met Harrison Owen in 2009 at a Scrum gathering in Orlando, Florida, where Heidi is now residing, strangely. And I had a unique opportunity in the dinner, the pre-conference dinner. They said, now we're going to have Harrison Owen talk to us. He's going to facilitate the open space tomorrow. And it turned out that my table was right next to Harrison's. And in fact, I was sitting right next to him, almost back to back. And he stood up and he gave a talk, an extemporaneous talk of about 20 minutes to a half an hour, right there. He didn't move from the table. And I grabbed a camera out of my bag and I turned it on and I aimed it at him. And it was this beautiful video, this up angle of Harrison talking about open space like he's going to talk to us all now. And I just really value that tape. I've listened to it many times. It's really something. So I have no doubt that we're going to get another recording like that right here, right now. And I'm just handing it over to Harrison right now. And hey, Harrison, whatever happens is the only thing that can happen. Here you go.
Exactly right. Hey, Dan, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's probably something of my curmudgeonly nature, I'm sure. But how many of you were alive in 1967? You don't have to answer. Yeah, there were some, I can see that. Do you happen to remember the publication of Mr. Marshall McLuhan's seminal work? No?
Understanding Media?
Well, the media, the messages in the media.
Yeah, that's out of that book.
Yes, okay. Well, it changed titles as it went over the years. That's the story of open space. You know, at one level, I think a lot of people take it as some strange, weird, exotic thing we do. And anybody who's ever done it says, wait a minute, this is the way we always do things. So, I mean, why are you charging money for this? The answer is that's a great fraud. Shouldn't. Probably what we should do is say, hey, look, operating freely in an open space environment is a birthright of every one of the 2.5 or whatever it is billion of us on this planet. And we create for ourselves massive amounts of pain by presuming that somebody is in charge and in control. You know, that could be, you know, whatever the current political advisor or the chief executive or what have you. And of course, if you stand any CEO up at any meeting and say, are you in charge? Of course, he's going to say yes. And he's lying through his teeth or her teeth. And it takes you about a beer to get to the truth. Maybe 2, but certainly no more than 1. I mean, the questions are infinite, but they're always to the point. Right, you're in charge of this organization, right? And your annual budget is, I don't know, pick a number. And you're somehow or another related to, if not directly, then indirectly to the foreign markets. What's the price of the yen tomorrow? Of course, you don't know. You'll never know. And the whole point is, I'm just picking yens, but we could do, any currency you like. Actually, we could do any piece of technology you like. You guys are supposedly in the techie business. Anybody who's worried about the validity and, what shall I say, superiority of the technologies today is about 2 months late. 3, 4, 5, 6 months late. I always had to laugh in my own way, at people who are so worried about preserving the proprietary rights of the techie industry. Well, it's good for the lawyers. But the actual truth of the matter is, any tech industry that's worth its salt, that's thinking about what it did last year, is out of business. And if it isn't, it will be shortly. So, to me, on a very fundamental level, open space, which I gather most of you have never had the experience of being in the middle of. And I also have to say, you've been in the middle of it all your life. What it says is the notion that somebody is actually in charge. I mean, that's just an opener. Yes, playing a fool. Now, I happen to be 83. You can see that, right? And when I was, quote, a child, the extent of the universe that I was party to was the solar system, and that was pretty far out. And beyond that, of course, was the Milky Way, which was definitely outside of anybody's comprehension. And then subsequently, what we've learned is that the Milky Way is just one of billions and billions and billions and billions, and I don't know how many billions of galaxies about which we don't know, don't control, have no idea what's going on. And that is just in the four-dimensional world that we think we actually understand. And there's some weird folks who talk about 13 dimensions. And well, that's string theory. Now, who knows whether right, wrong, or indifferent, but the point is, the real point is, if you're going to be in charge, you better damn well understand what's going on, right? And if you don't have a clue, I mean, really, honestly, don't have a clue. Okay, so all these galaxies are out there, and what do? Well, we don't encounter them every day. But what we do know, here's another ancient question. How many of you remember before we got digital TV, back to the days we had analog TV, and you'd switch between channels and not quite get it right? Yes? And what you got, yes, I see hands going up. And what you got was a snow screen, right? Do you know what that was? That was the holdover from the Big Bang. It was ambient radiation. 13.7 billion years ago. It's still coming down. You're in charge? Right. Okay, so, I mean, I could go on, but what's the point? After you've hit 13.7 and then recognize that that's just a current picture of a cosmos that we sort of think we maybe understand, which obviously we don't. And yes, it's 4 dimensions, but there could be 13, or actually this time-space reality. I don't need to go there. You can go there yourself. But then you can tell me about control. You could tell me how, okay, whatever happens is I'm in charge. Okay, put all that to one side, noodle it as you want to. Just remember all those courses you took about how you were going to assume control and be more in control and whatever it was you were supposed to do. I don't remember. And I say, if there's some doubt about all that, what could we do instead? I mean, if I'm not in charge and nobody is, we go from here. But I think we've always been here. We just keep pretending that we aren't here. Here is in this wonderful world where absolutely nothing ever happened according to the plan. And those who ever actualized the plan would have missed the whole point of what was going on. Why? Because the world went by. And I have all kinds of wonderful examples in the technology sphere, but you can provide your own. We all thought it was going to be this. Everybody jumped on the train. Guess what? While we weren't looking, a whole new world appeared. So there's the question. How do you live in a world like that? And back to 1967, Marshall McLuhan. The message is the medium. So what's this about open space? Open space is very simple. You know, as a process, Dan will charge you a lot of money to show you the process, but it's all right. You should do it. I did the same thing. I kept telling them, you don't need to do this. All you got to do is look at your life. They said, no, you got to charge us money. Otherwise, it isn't worth anything. Interesting. How do you do it? Very simple. Take any issue that anybody cares about. Sit in a circle. Create a bulletin board so everybody gets a chance to put up the things they care about and for which they'll take responsibility for. Which means talk about it, think about it, do something about it, and go to work. That's it. Beginning, middle, end. Everybody says, that's really weird. I know how we're supposed to run a meeting. Well, have you ever, I don't go to meetings anymore. They're too boring. A picture from a world that you may not be directly part of, but at least you recognize. We have this little company here in the United States called Microsoft. Now, Microsoft over the years has assiduously, except for his first round with the Dust Pro, has assiduously avoided the cutting edge of everything. The web, whatever. It came in later and they had enough money so they could catch up, but they assiduously avoided it. And they did it again with the internet. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they decided not the internet, the cloud. They all decided, we got to get with this cloud business. So they did the Microsoft thing. They organized a group of people who were going to create the Microsoft cloud, and they worked for 2 years. You know what they accomplished? Zilch. And I can't remember exactly why or how I got involved in this. But all of a sudden I had 250 very, 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 very senior engineers from Microsoft from all over the world. We had 2 days and we had to get Microsoft in the cloud. 2 days later, we'd done it. 3 or 4 days later, after I got back from Seattle, I got a phone call from the chief engineer, Microsoft engineer. Says, Harrison, you have totally fucked up my life. For 2 reasons. 1, I now have to go back to all those boring meetings that I went to before. And number 2, and even worse, I have to explain to myself and anybody who dares ask me the question, why it was I spent 2 years not doing what we clearly accomplished in 2 days. And if you doubt my words, just go online and dial up Microsoft Cloud. All right, what's OpenSpace all about? OpenSpace is very simply taking what I would say is the fundamental characteristic of human life, self-organization, and doing it. It's what happens. I mean, in my experience, when software engineers get together about something they don't really know, but they always sit in a circle, or as close to a circle as you can get with whatever laptops you get. And they either talk or don't talk, doesn't make any difference, and all of a sudden stuff starts to happen. And yeah, it may take them a while to clean up the details. But the truth of the matter is, a day or 2, they've done it. All right, back to 1967. The message is in the media. Dan has done a great thing, I think, in introducing the agile techie world to OpenSpace. I've been waiting for it for a long time, just personally. And in the nature of the world of agile, and I mean, I do the consulting business, I've done it, I know how it works. We had to have a process, we had to do this, we had to do that, and we charged by the hour and so forth. So, yeah. I'm not trying to take your livelihood away, but I am saying that the brilliant thing that Dan did was start with OpenSpace and end with OpenSpace. Now, yeah, he's probably going to try and cut me off on this one. He could forget where everything happens in the middle. But the truth of the matter is, the message is in the medium. Now, you guys are the consulting types, and the other thing that, I mean, my Microsoft buddy was mild, but my consulting friends, Dan would be one, says, wait a minute, what about my billable hours? I say, well, that's the problem. I mean, I've had a whole mess of different kinds of clients, not all of them corporate, but whatever. And it's an amazing thing. In 2 or 3 days, we can do what they've been trying to do forever. And if you start figuring about as a increment of productivity, like how many days did we take before, and then how many days did it take it to do it? I won't go through the whole thing, but in one particular case, these folks were going to take, I forget, 2 years, 3 years, and we did it literally 2 days, flat, done, finished, out, finished. And if you just ran 2 days over against 2 years, what you ended up with, I thought, was a 1,500% increase in productivity. And I said that, and I was in Taiwan, as I remember. And I'm mathematically stupid. Some kid says, Harrison, you're off by a decimal point. It's 15,000. Now, I grant you that walking into the office of your next client and say, how would you like to have a 15,000% increase in productivity? Not guaranteed, but reasonable shot. They'd throw you out. I actually had a client one time, and you would know him if I said it, so I won't say it. And he said, what's your fee? And I gave him a number. I thought it was extravagant. He said, what? He said, I can't even get that through the billing office. Double it. So I did. Okay, guys, I'll stop. Any questions? Where do you want to go? And Dan, if you want to cut me off, you know how to do it.
Well, in my experience, that doesn't usually turn out the way I expected. So I think it's best to just kind of go the way you said. Let's see what happens here.
I'm here anywhere you want to go. Or if you don't want to go anywhere, I can press the button too.
Well, if anyone has a question, it might be a good idea to paste it into the chat, and then Harrison can maybe pick off some of these questions and answer them, the ones that he finds most intriguing or the ones he has time for, so on and so forth. So if you have a question, why not just type it right into the chat if you got a question.
Yeah, someone says, how do you create that interest? So when people call you to do open space events, how do they know about you? And how do you, if you're called in, how do you create that interest?
I don't have a clue. In all honesty, I don't know how many I've done in how many continents or whatever, but in most cases, I never saw the people before. And how they found me, I don't know. Well, I take that back. New York Times wrote a feature article about me and my work some years ago. And I did get a call from a number of folks in New York. And I went to visit with one of them. And he said, well, we want to do this. I said, I don't think you really want to do this. And I didn't. So, I mean, the only time I ever had, if you will, a leg up kind of thing, where I guess it was, so the honest answer is I don't know. I honestly think that the real thing is that my major calling card is desperation. When folks get to the end of the line and the company's going down and the opportunity's passing away, or I don't know, however that get measured, that gets started or measured, that's happened. And as one client says, you know, we're at the end of the road. We don't have any idea where to go, and we know that we're at the bottom of the heap and it's only getting worse. That was a quote. We don't have a clue what you do. We're not sure that you do. But can you help us? I said, well, we can try. And guess what? They managed to do in 2 days what they had never done before in their lives. Isn't that magic? This is what human beings do. I mean, every now and again, somebody says, Harrison invented. He didn't invent it. I mean, it took me 2 martinis. And I said, you know, there's got to be a way that adult human beings can deal with complicated stuff. I mean, they've clearly done it without going through all the bullshit that we go through. Now, how would you do that? And I had 3 images that just popped up in my mind. One was a circle. I mean, as it happens, I've spent a lot of time in West Africa, and anytime there was an issue that people didn't understand or whatever it was, the whole village would get together and they'd sit in a circle. And they had an aphorism. They said, the sun will never set on a palaver, which translated means we're just going to keep talking until we get it done. And that's what they do. So I thought, well, that's pretty good for openers, but we can't all sort of sit around and gaze at each other's navel. What are we going to talk about? And the second image that popped into my mind was a bulletin board. And I thought, I can't say I've been everywhere in the world, but I've been over a lot of it. And everywhere I've ever gone, if somebody had something they needed to have done or wanted or whatever, they put it up on the bulletin board. I mean, you know, a wife, a husband, a cow, a pig, a sheep, a goat, diesel tractor, whatever, put it on a bulletin board. I thought, well, that's kind of brain dead technology. I think we can do that. And then what do? Well, you now have the people. Those are the ones who cared, and they're all there. And how do you know that? Because they got there. I mean, this is complicated. And you know pretty much what they want to talk about. They've already said that. And they've identified the discrete elements. Now, not everybody's going to be interested in or competent to deal with all of them. So who wants to deal with what? Well, at that point, the image that popped up in my mind was an indigenous marketplace. I mean, you could go to Wall Street and see the same thing. It works the same way, but they've sort of cleaned up their act a little bit. But an indigenous marketplace, if you've never been to one, nobody runs it. Nobody. It pops up. I mean, we've got this latest thing. It's called the pop-up whatever thing. Well, I'll tell you what, it's been around for a long time. And so how do you get it? You just open the marketplace. Now, what happens in the marketplace? Well, we decide who wants to talk to whom about what, when, and where. And we have, and Dan will explain it to you if you care about it, is a very brain dead way of handling all that with Post-its. And the net effect is we can take 2,000 people, 3,000 people on a highly complex subject. And in about an hour and a half, that includes, hello, everybody, down to the time they go to work. And they will write a book about the future of their discipline, or the Microsoft Cloud, or whatever. Now, we've only done this probably, I would say 500, but probably 600. I have no idea how many times in 146 countries over 30 some odd years around the world. I have never found any group of people anywhere, I don't care how ignorant, how educated, how wealthy, how impoverished, how westernized, how some totally other culture that didn't jump right in and do it instantaneously. Now, is there such a thing? Well, I never say never, but I never found it. So it begins to suggest to me, I am slow, but 34 years begins to get my attention. And one of the curious things is that no academic institution has ever taken it seriously. There is no peer-reviewed article anywhere, HBR, you name it, about open space. And I could take offense. I don't. I understand exactly. If what millions, I mean, if you have 500,000 open spaces and 2 or 3 of them that I know of are 3,000 or 4,000 people, you're talking millions and millions of people on every continent. If that's been the common experience, how many people at how many business schools would lose their jobs? How many papers that have been written on organizational theory and methods and so forth and so on would be declared interesting? I'm not going there. So I have absolutely no question, I mean, personally, why it is that it is. But big secret between you and me, it's as easy to do as I just said. Now, how do you get people to come? You wait until they're desperate. And the truth of the matter is, if they aren't desperate, they won't care to come. And never try and sell them, ever. Why? Because then you're going to be trying to sell a method that doesn't exist, which they already own, which they already know how to do, and they're going to think you're a fraud. And they'd be right. But what you have to do, I think, at least my experience, is you're always close to the client. When the client is saying to you, or somebody says to somebody who says to you, or however it works, this is Shitsville and we don't know our way out of here. You say, well, we can talk. And I have to say that about half the time, I would say, I don't think you really want to do this. Or I'd say, I think you ought to go back and think about it. If you can think of any other way to do what you want to do or get done, for God's sake, do it. If you run out of options, come talk to me. Now, I understand that sounds like the negative sell, but the truth of the matter is the last thing personally that I ever want to do is get involved in something where I'm trying to force people to do things that they just I mean, whatever. And so I have absolutely no question at all. Not that we can solve every problem of humanity, but I have total confidence that we can operate at a level of complexity and interrelatedness and actually fun. I mean, the really interesting thing to me, in my dotage, I'm teaching a class. I won't even tell you how I got into it. It was not my doing, but in any event, I did it. And whoever was putting this on says, "Well, what's the name of your class?" Well, I'd never thought of it. And so the first thing that came into my head was death, dying, and life. Yeah. And well, that's interesting. And the next question was, well, what's this about? Well, as I'd never thought of it, I had to think about it a little bit. And I did. And I came out and said, well, I think Bette Midler was right. She wrote this I don't know that she wrote it, but somebody wrote this wonderful song called The Rose, a line from which goes like this: those afraid of dying will never learn to live. Now, you can debate it, but it's an interesting thought. We all sort of know these people that spend their whole life being so afraid of dying that they never get out there. So I think she may be right, at least at that point. So anyhow, I said, okay, well, I'll do this. It's a 10-week course. And the last thing I'm going to do is write 10 lectures. I mean, I've written a number of books, so doing that is not something I can't do, but I thought it'd be boring. So I thought, well, we're going to do an experiment. I'll do the first one in the sense that I'll just sort of chat about things they might want to think about. I call them like head of the trail starts. Weird ideas that may never have thought about, and if you did, now I'm not going to give you the rest of it because I don't know the rest of it. And then from there on out, it's all open space. So I've got, I forget what it is, 20 odd folks. They're roughly my age. Actually, most of them are a little younger. And so they're not only of an age, but death, dying, and life is a concerning experience. Existential, we might say. And what's happened is it's wonderful. We sit in a circle, we create a bulletin board, we open a marketplace, and they all go to work, and we have, 4 or 5 sessions going on simultaneously, and people write reports, and they share them. And one time this guy walked in, and he says, hey, this is really weird. We're talking about death and grief work, and everybody's laughing. I said, isn't that awful? I mean, these people have gone through their whole life and take learning to be something that you agonize through. Well, anyhow, it's fun. And it says it goes for 20 sessions. And I've told them, I said, it's over when it's over. And maybe it's 20, maybe it's 21. And being a total irreverent sort, I would like to offer one thing. One of the really curious things, I mean, here's something you could try at your next, whatever it is you do. Some of the greatest commentators on life, living, dying, and life are the great composers of the 19th, 18th, and 19th century. And they did it in titled it with something that made everybody never want to listen to it. They were called Requiem Masses. Now, the really curious thing is no dead person ever heard a Requiem Mass. Think about it. And it, there's sort of I say it, the light and frothy, Mr. Foray, and you can get the thunderous beat on the drums, mass chorus, etc. Mr. Verdi, it sounds like an opera, but it's as actually is beautiful. And Mr. Brahms did the Deutsche Requiem, which is absolutely ethereal. And the one that I think I would like to share with them, I happen to have a reasonable home theater, is the Missa Solemnis, which is Beethoven, which actually makes the Beethoven Ninth sound kind of passé. And most of you, I'm sure, have never heard it. And it is long. It's 180 minutes long, which is why, it's a full symphony orchestra and chorus, which is why it's rarely performed. And it's so big you couldn't do it in a church if you had to. But it's amazing. And all of a sudden it opens the space and the time that most people never experience. So, I don't know, weird? Yeah, I've talked too long. It's 12:46. Where else do you want to go? I kept seeing things that said the chat room is something and I can't read it, but it's all right. Somebody talk it. I don't have my glasses on.
Yeah, Harrison, you haven't really touched on invitation, so I'm hoping you could offer some reflections on invitation. And one of the things I asked was, is it mandatory in the open space design for an invitation to be issued instead of something else? And if so, isn't an opt-in mandatory invitation a contradiction of terms?
Yeah. The interesting thing about invitation is very simple. If you can refuse it, it's a real invitation. If you can't, it's not. Now, if you refuse it, that's clear and present evidence that you didn't care to come. Caring is the operative word. Now, just to cut to the chase, I should infinitely prefer to have 5 people who really cared than 500 people who could care less. Now, the actual truth of the matter is, if you think about most corporate meetings that I've had anything tangentially to do with, I can't stand going through them, but just sort of watching them. It's 500 people who could care less. And it's done in such a way that it maximizes their caring less. And the net result is careless. And then everybody says it didn't work. Well, no, it worked perfectly. It's exactly what you expected. On the other hand, give me 2 or 3 people who really care about something. And it's true in any area, but I find it particularly true with software. You get 2 or 3 guys who really, guys as non-sexist, who really just kind of groove on whatever it is. And if they need some help, they're going to go out and get it. Believe me. It may be at the other end of the earth, but it's how quickly can they dial it up? So from my point of view, opening space without a serious, real, refusable invitation is not only a contradiction in terms, it's just a waste of time. I shouldn't have said that, should I?
Someone is asking, do you ever follow up with people after the open space, or you just leave them to water and then you don't hear what happens afterwards?
When you have people who care, and they care deeply, and they've had a chance to put out what they care about, anything I could do is just getting in the way, usually. The only time I've ever really followed up, to use your word, is when the troops had it all together and some senior executive came in and said, hey, you got to do it this way. And my conversation was usually with the executive director or CEO. And one of them I thought was wonderful. I got a call from the CEO, and he said, they just fired me. I said, excuse me. He says, you remember that open space we did? And I said, yeah. He said, well, they fired me. I said, oh, well, I'm sorry. And I tried to say all the nice things you say when somebody says he's just been fired. Hung up the phone. And not 2 seconds later, I got a call from the vice president of personnel, who was sort of my good buddy during this. He said, you may have heard that the CEO got fired. I said, yeah. He said, you might be interested in why. I said, yeah, I'm interested. He says, well, I'll tell you. You remember we did this open space. Now, this particular operation, this organization wasn't techie. As I remember, it had a $365 million a year bottom line. I mean, it's not huge, but it was doing pretty good. And in the first 6 hours of the open space, we added $30 million. I mean, they invented a new product. They cured an inventory thing that was really disastrous. And I don't remember all the other things that happened. Some of it never came to pass, didn't make any difference. But the folks walked out of there and they were whizzed. I mean, they were just walking on water and clouds and what have you. And then the CEO made this incredible. He tried to micromanage it. Well, the first month they said, you know, you could do a little better. And the second month they said, you will do a little better. And the third month they went to the board. Now the board was not stupid. They saw 10% of their annual going out the door. So it was a choice between 10% of their annual budget or turnaround or the CEO. Well, you know what went. So that's about the extent of follow-up that I've done. Next.
Yeah. So someone was asking, what's beyond open space? Is anything beyond open space? What's next?
We haven't even begun to get to the edges of it. My hope, you know, what people keep trying to do is modify open space, do a little tweak, do a little this, that, and the other thing. That's a waste of time. This thing's been going on forever. I don't know if this analogy will fit with you, but I sail, or I spend a lot of time on boats. And the difference between a good sailor and somebody who's not is the good sailor actually understands he doesn't understand. And the other kind of sailor is just doing it by the book. Now, the truth of the matter is you never know which way the wind's going to blow. You never know which way the tide is going to run. You never know what the chop level is going to be. You never know whether you're going to have clear diesel fuel or not diesel fuel. You just don't know. So you do the best you can. Now, there are some things that help you out here and there, and a degree of experience is helpful. So what's after open space? It's starting with a premise that most of what, well, this is total heresy. Everybody stop their ears because you shouldn't hear this. It starts with the understanding that most, I won't say all, most of what we're currently doing under the heading of management, organizing, running systems, doing software, etc., in an organized way, is counterproductive. It actually puts us 2 steps behind when we could go multi-steps ahead. So how could it be? Well, if it were me and I happen to be in the software area, just for an example, I've done this and I know it works, but it's a little risky. Client would come in and say, I want a system that'll do X, Y, Z. And I say, good. Can you be a little bit more specific? I need some system specs. And they do. And they are what clients do. And it's okay. At least we are talking. Now what I do is turn it over to a techie and say, I didn't understand what he said, and I don't understand the way you speak, but put this in some language that some small group of people might actually understand who have the skills to get it done. And that can take whatever amount of time, but usually not very long. And then what you do, you can try this. It works. It's awful. You take that system specs and, frankly, if it's longer than a big paragraph, it's too long. And you put it out on an APB, all points bulletin, to anybody who might care. That would be any, student techie, any old graybeard, any secretary. We don't have any of those anymore, but you know what I mean. Anybody who cares. And there's Dan, you got this one? Listening careful. An invitation, which says, if you care, come. We'll meet on whatever. And when they walk in the room, there are a couple of flip charts. There's a circle of chairs, depending on how many people are predicted to come. You never know, but it's whatever. And when you start, guess what? You say, okay, now, what are the issues and opportunities for this system specs? And everybody gets out a little teeny piece of paper and writes down shortly. I mean, not their PhD dissertation, shortly. Whatever it is. I mean, I don't speak the language, but it's all right. Sign their name, stand up and say, this is my issue, this is my name, and they post it on a bulletin board. Bulletin board could be the wall. That's usually what it is. And you keep going until you don't have any more. And when everybody says, I'm done, you say, good. And it usually takes 10, 15 minutes. And then here's something you don't do. You don't say, well, let's prioritize it. Let's try and cut the number, et cetera. No. The promise is if it's an issue, it's up there. Period. No argument. That's the invitation. So then what you do is, guess what? You open the marketplace. Now what happens in the marketplace? Everybody. I mean, that can be a couple thousand people, but for something like this, it'll be a small group. Goes to the wall. And the name of the game is this. You can combine anything, you can sequence anything, you can change it around, but there is one rule. If you're going to change anything on somebody else's piece of paper, you will get their permission before you do.
Harrison, I have to ask your permission.
To quit.
Yeah, can we, because we have a sort of a agreement with everybody to be done, you know, in an hour, right, Heidi? So.
It's 1 o'clock. Well, we're done. It's perfect. That's all you have to do. And once they've all agreed on the time, space, and what have you, go to work. If it takes you longer than a couple of days, fine. But it won't. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Awesome, Harrison. Thank you very, very much. We've got a full recording of the whole thing. We've got some great chat questions. Maybe we can incorporate.
My email does work.
Great.
And I do answer it.
Can we just put that in the chat? If anybody wanted to send you an email in this group, can they just send you an email?
They can do that. It would be helpful if you sort of said, I was with so forth, so I have an idea of where it's coming from. But
sure.
I just sort of reply indiscriminately. Anyhow, what's next? That's totally up to you.
Awesome, Harrison. Thanks a lot. And Heidi, do you want to pick it up from here?
Yeah. So
I'll leave it. Bye.
Thank you so much, Harrison. Thank you so much. It's so great. So this was the second of 4 in our Open Leadership series. So please join us for the next one, which will be on April 8th, 2 weeks exactly from now, on Monday at noon, same time. And Daniel will share here how he took open space and created open space agility. So we'll be talking about open space agility, and he'll be explaining that on April the 8th. Anything else you want to say, Daniel?
Yeah, I want to say that Open Space Agility is published under an open source license, which means that it's free like air, free like water, not free for 90 days like some software. So feel free to take it, create something new out of it, derive from it. It's completely for you. All you have to do is mention where you got it from and offer whatever you create on the same terms to everybody else. On May 14th and 15th, we're pulling together a 2-day event around invitational open ideas, which, you know, Harrison is clearly the dean of. And we're bringing this into organizational change. So May 14 and 15, the web URL is openleadershipnetwork.com. And the thing is called Open Leadership Symposium. So again, if you go to openleadershipnetwork.com, you can sign up. We're offering 90-minute workshops in that on specific open topics. Heidi's given one of them. I'm giving one of them. And some of the others here are. And we have pre-conference and post-conference full-day and 2-day certification courses from folks like Mike Burrows, Nils Flaging, myself, and others. So I certainly look forward to seeing you there, and I hope you'll consider the conference and let other folks know about it. So that's all I've got to say, Heidi.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. So we're just a few minutes over, so we'll stop. The recording will be up on our site in just a day or so. So please do check it out. Thank you so much for attending. Have a great afternoon or evening, wherever you are. Bye.